All right, have some listener questions as we get into it. Number one, how do players see the Aaron Jones Bakhtiari moves? And I think the first thing you do as a player is especially with the Bakhtiari thing, was a long time coming. Just because of the injuries, huge cap number, blah 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 blah. Mm, the way he talked about last season, as far as being a rebuilding year because Aaron was gone, the relationship that him and Aaron have. I mean, I don't know what the odds are that he goes to the Jets, but it's got to be pretty high. So I don't think anybody, listen, the guys in the offensive line room are going, oh man, he was really good. I learned a lot from him. I think some guys in the locker room are going, man, what a leader that guy was. We're going to miss that part of this, right? And it's just a reminder what an ugly business any of this stuff is, because inevitably you can't play forever. The game moves on. The game passes you by. I think with Aaron Jones, it's a little bit different because you have this very recent understanding of the difference it has on the offense when Aaron Jones is in the football game. And unfortunately, or whatever, for AJ Dillon, it is like when Aaron Jones is out, that means AJ Dillon is in, and the Packers weren't nearly as good with AJ. When Aaron Jones is in, because of Dontavian Wicks, because of Jaden Reed, because of Aaron Jones, and all the things, Malik Heath, all the Dobbs, but really you think about those rookies and all the places you could manipulate them. And now you've got another guy that could do that with the mind of, the mastermind of Coach LaFleur, and the way that he can manipulate space using these really unique individuals. I think those guys are looking at this like they could be thinking like, okay, I'm going to eat a little bit more, but they also have to understand, like, offensive line knows we were not nearly as good without Aaron Jones, right? Jordan Love knows I'm not nearly as comfortable right now today, day one, without Aaron Jones. The prospect of having Aaron Jones is a check down, a handoff, a screen, etc. But in this case, it's not AJ Dillon anymore. You're getting a guy that was an All-Pro 2 years ago. You're getting a Josh Jacobs who's an absolute unit. Like, for some guys, he was probably running back number one over Saquon Barkley in this offseason. If you made that argument to me, I know physically Saquon's just kind of a different guy, but if you just look at production and the kind of guy you want, it's hard to argue anybody against Josh Jacobs. He's a really, really good player. It's nothing's a bargain, but it seems like a steal in this day and age with running backs, how much you have to pay these guys for the level of production you can actually get. So I do think there's some emotion to it, but players, I can just tell you, when we lose guys, when guys get cut and it's unexpected, you hurt for them. Usually you end up at their house that night, a couple cocktails, talk about how much how much you appreciate them, and how great whatever the next destination is going to be, right? Because we're always being positive. But for guys that are going to move on, for guys that are going to be free agents, it's a celebration. It's an opportunity. Hey, we think you're going to go get paid. We think you're going to go somewhere that really appreciates you, etc. Unfortunately, these are the kind of unexpected, at least with the Aaron Jones one. I bet you there was, if he was still home last night after he signed with the Vikings, there's 20 dudes over his house. That's for sure. How hard is it to kick inside to guard year one? So a lot of questions are revolved around what are we going to do with the offensive line position? And usually Goody likes to draft a tackle, maybe kick him inside for a year, then move him back out. Here's the thing. It depends on the scheme and the system. It really depends on the body type. So Jonathan Ogden played left guard for the first year of his career in Baltimore, right? Jonathan Ogden's 6'9" with that afro, right? Like, he's a tall guy. You can do it. Tunzel played guard his first year. Brandon Allen was playing left tackle. So you can do it. Now, how effective you are depends on, like, how is it easy for you to kind of unfold? Like, are you if you're a 6'7" guy, it's hard to play guard, quite frankly. If you're a 6'3" guy, it's a little bit easier because those guys that you're playing against, 6'3", 295, 315, whatever, but they're more direct, right? So the game happens a little bit faster. In the immediacy of confrontation is a little bit faster because of the distance between you and the 3 technique, or you and the 2-eye. There's obviously not as much space outside. And, quite frankly, and I played this position, like, 1/3 of the game, you have help, or there's, it's some sort of double block, with the center. So only 2/3 of the game you single it up, if that. So from that perspective, that's why tackles get paid more. It is a little bit, play in, play out. You're a shorter path to the quarterback versus a longer path from the tackle position, but the tackle's going to have action. And nowadays with the chips and all that stuff, maybe it's closer to even, but the tackle's going to have action every play, or almost every play, unless they run like a drop zone. But I think for most guys, it's easy. If you got a little bit of like violence to you, and you're a athletic tackle, if you like the violent part of the game, moving inside is really not that bad. Do you think a top tackle is available at 25? And this is really the question. I'm just going to roll over to the tackles here on my little Google machine. And so you start looking at, you got Fashanu from Penn State. And I think for me, the right tackle, Fuaga from Oregon State, is going to go pretty high. Now, then you start talking about, okay, the kid from Bama. You start talking about Mims from Georgia, which he's not a Packers guy. I mean, 6'8". I mean, 340. I'd love to see what happens if they draft a guy like that, but holy hell, that's a lot of human. And anytime for me, you look at Mekhi Becton, I've said this since day one, and it's not a knock on him, but if you're that big and you hold that much weight, there's a lot of injury probability. And the second thing is, if you got a guy, when you're 6'8", 6'9", everybody turns into Dwight Freeney. Who's the one guy that gave Jonathan Ogden problems? Dwight Freeney, right? Last year, Myles Garrett, who's 6'5" and has ridiculous bend, he's running circles around Mekhi Becton. Why? It's hard for that guy to get that low. So I don't know if that's my guy there. Now, Troy Fautanu, he might be a better guard. I don't know. But if he's available, man, snatch him up as fast as you can. That guy's an absolute unit. I like the kid from Oklahoma. A lot of people are talking about the kid Graham Barton from Duke. Haven't watched enough tape on him to tell you honestly. Jordan Morgan, we talked about the kid from Arizona. He's going to be. I don't think he's a first round draft pick. But I think realistically, you could look at some of these guys and say that, maybe the top, so Alt, Fashanu, Latham, Fuaga, Fautanu for sure. And Mims somebody's going to fall in love with Mims because they're going to look at the Tennessee tackle last year, or they're going to look at the other kid, the big kid from Ohio State, the right tackle from Ohio State, and they're going to go, okay, we can definitely work, right? Just huge humans, strong, big weight. They're not 400 pounds, but they're 340, 350. You can work with that, man. There's something there for sure. In the case of Jordan Love, in the case of Aaron Jones and David Bakhtiari, how do these breakups work? Is it the team or the player? And I can tell you my experience when I decided to go free agent. I think when you're older, the dynamic changes, first of all. So both these guys wanted to be Packers for life, but you have to be, if you take too much of a pay cut, you're going to constantly feel like the team doesn't respect you. There's no two ways about it, because the only way you show respect in this league is by the money that you make, right? And I know Tom Brady didn't always take top money because his wife was a supermodel at the time, was making $45 million a year or something, right? And he kind of so that's a different situation. But generally speaking, respect is between players is something completely different. But I'm talking about respect from ownership to the player. Like, you show respect by how much you're going to pay that guy. And so if you take, like, let's just pick a number and say Aaron Jones, they said, hey, Aaron, we want you for $6 million. And he's like, well, I was just the best player on your offense. I made 11 last year, or 10 or 11 last year, and you want me for 6 now. I can't take that because you're showing me disrespect. And if I constantly be angry about it, and it's not going to help me, it's not going to help you, it's not going to help me. When you are feeling like you're in your prime, you make this decision. Am I getting what I want from this team? In other words, do I feel appreciated? Do I feel wanted? Do I feel like this is the best fit for me? Do I feel like I have a great relationship with my coaches? Do I feel like I have a great relationship with the management? Do I feel like I have a great relationship with the players? Is it somewhere? How important is it to me to finish my career in one spot? The other side of that is the ownership and the management, the personnel guys are going to look at you and go, okay, like for me, for example, is guard a premium position? Or am I willing to pay a guard what someone like me was going to make in free agency? Like Ted came out and said it. Ted's like, he didn't think the guard was a premium position. So, and you can't hate on that, right? So, like Sherm, he wanted to re-sign me. And he made it quite clear to me, like, hey, we're gonna pay the way my contract was. They're gonna have to pay me a huge sum of money. At the time was a ridiculous amount of kind of flat payment to continue that contract. And we put it in there was a poison pill, so they'd have to cut me. But they made Ted general manager, and Ted was like, all right, you, Marco, I think Sharp, guys were gone. And he was like, I think we can, find replacements for the guard position. Now, 3 years later, when they had 3 years of struggling to find that replacement, he said, okay, we should have kept Mike. That was a mistake. Right. But that's a unique situation that just, Sitton and TJ just hadn't quite come along yet. Right. So they got to look at it from the perspective of at running backs like they are right now. Do you, as much as you like that guy, do you want to set a precedent by overpaying for a guy that you like? Do you think you can find any kind of replacement that's similar in the market right now? Because like guard, running back, I think it's changed a little bit with guard in particular, but running back now, they're going, hey man, we can find a third round pick. We can find a fourth that can average 4 yards a carry, especially in the boxes that you're seeing in defense now. So sometimes it's hard to ascribe a value or to quantify, a guy like Aaron, who last 5 games, he averaged 5.7 yards per carry, and doing all these great things. But then it's like age, this, that, the other, cost. Now we can get a guy 4 years younger who's been second team All Pro 2 years ago for not a ton of money, quite frankly, compared to what we used to think about running backs should get paid. So it's always, there's two sides of it, and hopefully they're having conversations so they're aligned. I think what happens more often than not, it's unfortunate, is like Goody comes out and says, "Oh, we have every intention to keep Aaron," and that probably was not communicated the right way. In that, one, if Aaron thought, "Okay, that means that I'm going to demand this or that or the other," or two, he just was saying that to keep everybody quiet so he didn't have to hear speculation. There's so many things that go on in backdoor conversations, hallway conversations between player and personnel guys, agent conversations between agent and personnel guys. There's so much of that happens that we're not privy to, right? Unless you're a guy who's talking to the agent, talking to the players, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's what's hard about these situations is you really don't know how this happened. You just understand, like, the meat and potatoes of this are, you had a 29, 30-year-old guy who was a great player for this team, third all time in a lot of categories for running back position, right? You now have a 26-year-old guy who, for the next 3 years at least, is going to be a really, really high-level player if he stays healthy. It's hard, but it makes total sense. And then the last one is, what does a player go through when a team doesn't want them anymore? So if you're a longtime guy like these two, and they just go, you know what, it doesn't make sense anymore. How do you feel about that? Well, I would say this. For me, the guys that I know that struggled in retirement, that were bitter at the National Football League when they retired, those guys usually were hurt or they aged out of playing. If that makes sense. In other words, they didn't get to choose their, you read those books where it's like choose your adventure. They didn't get to choose their final chapter, right? The team said, no, you're too old. We don't want you anymore. Or no, you're not good enough. We don't want you anymore. Or no, you're too expensive. We don't want you anymore. Right. And if you've had a long, fruitful career and you've enjoyed your experience, I think you can tear that page out and throw it in the wastebasket and just enjoy the journey and for what it is. But it's very common for these guys because football players think that they're invincible. Like that's just part of we have to feel that. It's part of our DNA. So when somebody all of a sudden tells you, like, you're not fast enough anymore, you're not good enough anymore, you cost too much, you're too old, we want to get a younger, that stuff for some guys is you can't even fathom that it's happening because you go, wait a second, I'm him. I was him when I was 21. I'm him when I'm 31. And that's just not the truth. And I think it's further away you get from, as for a retired guy, the further away you get from that, you realize it's absolutely how it is. And you can usually pinpoint the time, the very specific play where you're like, okay, I'm not him anymore. I can't move like that anymore. I can't do that anymore. But I think that's the hard part, right? Is somebody you never want in your whole career, you never want anybody to tell you that it's over. You want to be able to make that decision on your own. I think when you make that decision on your own, you're at peace with yourself, right? It's like when Gronk retires, everybody would still want Gronk. Makes the decision on his own, at peace with himself, right? When you're told it's over, that's hard to deal with, at least initially. Now, the further away you get from that situation, I think you start remembering the good times. And I think when you look at Bakhtiari in particular, what he came out with and the love he shows the fans, the love he shows the community, the love he shows the organization, I think right now you see, okay, listen, guys, this was probably coming for a long time. I've had time to reflect. I've been injured. I understand. I'm going to appreciate everything that happened, right? I'm going to appreciate everything that I got to do there, the friends, the relationships, everything that was so special to me. He's lived the dream. He's the left tackle for the Green Bay Packers for 10 years. He lived the dream. So there's nothing to be upset about. Only positive things. And I think you go on and just go about your business. There'll probably be some more stuff as we move forward here from a free agent standpoint. We get closer to the draft. I thought it was important to, one, talk about the impact of Bakhtiari and Aaron Jones, because they'll be Packer Ring of Honor, whatever they are, Packers Hall of Fame. They'll be those two guys without a doubt. I think one of those guys is a gold jacket guy. I think he's first ballot, quite frankly, for me. I don't know if he gets it or not, but that's how good he is. And when you lose guys like that, there's always that, okay, who takes over as leader? Who does this? There's all those questions, but that figures itself out in the locker room. And the thing is, with whether it's Jordan Love or it's not, understand, us decreeing that Jordan Love is the new leader of the team doesn't make it so, right? Certainly removing two huge older pieces of the puzzle paves the way now for an Elgin Jenkins to be a leader of the team or the offense, Jordan Love to be a leader of the offense, Romeo Doubs to be a leader of the offense, Josh Jacobs to come and be the leader of the offense. That's on the table now. Now, how that works out, those personalities, you got to figure that out. The team's got to figure that out internally. And we might never really know until 4 or 5 years down the road. But you are losing two big personalities officially off the team. And you are now getting a really good player on defense. And I'm going to end it with this. Off topic. My son got his Instagram account hacked today. I'm just getting all these messages from it. Now, my son is a 15-year-old on social media, probably more than he should be. And he says to me today, he says, "Hey, Dad," he's still laughing in the car. He goes, "My buddy so-and-so is sending me all these texts like he can't get into his email. And so he wants to send me a code and I can read it back to him." And I said, "Are you serious? Think about what you're saying. He's going to send a code to your phone instead of his phone. And you're going to read it back to him? You're going to send it to him?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard." And as it turns out, he didn't hear a word I said. And he did exactly that. And they hacked him, and now he's asking everybody for money. So, there it is. Thanks to BetOnline, our sponsor. Find me at Michael60 on Instagram, and please hit that subscribe button on channel. This is Block Party with Mike Wall. Thank you, guys.